And may I invite, if you are a panelist for this session, please make your way to the front. We are short of, I think we are fine. We are fine. Let's get inside so that we can start, colleagues. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hastings Chikoko, and I'm the Managing Director of Regions and Mayor Engagement, as well as Regional Director for Africa for C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. I am so delighted to stand here to moderate this conversation, which is close to my heart because it's about people. As we address climate change, we are not doing this work in a desert. That is not that has no one. We are doing this work in contexts that have people. Therefore, we have to deal with economics, we have to deal with sociology, we have to deal with psychology. I'm therefore delighted that the organizers of the Africa Climate Week had a dedicated track focusing on economies, societies, livelihoods, and health. And this particular session would like to take that track and narrow down to livelihoods, decent jobs, and skills building for a just transition. A just transition because we want this planetary transition, environmental transition, ecological transition to also move along with the social and economic transition that is necessary. So for this, we'll start with some framing presentations, and I'll be calling colleagues to actually do that, and after that, we'll have a conversation. And I have an able panel here that will actually lead us into that conversation. So to start the framing, I would like to call upon my colleague, Sama. She is coming from International Renewable Energy Agency, and she provides oversight on renewable energy education. And I'm starting with her because when we talk about green jobs or decent jobs, it starts with the development of the human capital. So, Sama, in your framing, could you please highlight this workforce development, education, and skills building for this particular just transition that we want to see in Africa? Can we just give Sama a round of applause as she makes her way to give us a framing presentation?
Thank you very much, Hastings, for the welcome. And it's really a pleasure to join you all today. So as Hastings said, my name is Samah. I work on renewable energy education and skill building at IRENA. And I also lead a new partnership that we recently launched called the Energy Transition Education Network. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about this shortly and how you can all get involved. So we know that the potential for green jobs on the continent is truly vast. And as Hastings just said, it is not possible to have a conversation about green job creation in Africa without also talking about the people who are going to be filling these jobs. Now, quite often you hear company CEOs complaining about the skilling shortages that they're facing in the continent. And so we truly do need to invest in education, in training, in skill building as a key step in building a representative workforce that draws on the talents of people from all backgrounds. So in the renewable energy sector alone, IRENA's analysis shows that a 1.5 degree compliant pathway could create as many as 122 million jobs by 2050. And so this includes jobs in renewable energy, in energy flexibility, in power grids, in energy efficiency. And this is just for the energy sector. When we speak more broadly about green jobs in general, this figure is much, much higher. And so, of course, this means that we need to identify skilling gaps and really just rapidly build and scale up the human resource capacity for energy transition goals. So what do we need to do? Okay, so I have about 5 minutes to speak to you for these remarks. So I'm going to take the time to highlight 5 key actions that we need to see to advance education and skill building for a just transition in Africa. The first thing we need are skills roadmaps. We need to match the foreseen supply and demand. So we know that the transition to a green economy is going to create many new jobs, and these require new skills to be developed. But at the same time, we're also going to see a shift in the skills that are needed in many existing occupations. And so we need to analyze and identify skilling gaps, priorities, mismatches across the continent. Sometimes skills are being built, not necessarily in the places that they're needed, so we need to deal with some of these mismatches. And then we need to determine what type of education and skilling programs are needed and where. Next, building off this, we need to urgently update and strengthen curricula. Now, there's no reason why, for example, an energy engineer that is graduating in 2023 doesn't have a solid renewable energy engineering skill set. Okay. There's no reason why there is a newly qualified electrician that has just completed their technical program, doesn't know how to install solar PV systems on a rooftop. We need to make sure that our curriculums are fit for purpose, that they're forward-looking rather than set decades ago. And so this requires integrating energy transition skills into existing programs and disciplines where they're needed, but also creating new programs for higher education, for vocational education. We need apprenticeship schemes, and also upskilling and reskilling training. For example, we have fossil fuel workers who will be affected by the transition that we're seeing, and we need to make sure that they're prepared to work in the new economy. And we need to think carefully about what the demand will be and which capacities we need to build on the continent and in order to deploy the skilling programs that are necessary. So we need technical skills for development, for manufacturing, for installation, for maintenance, but we also need the skills that are going to create the enabling environment that allows a green economy to thrive. So we need the business graduates, the policymakers, the economists, the journalists, and the public as a whole to be well versed on sustainability and just transition issues. The third thing we need is to develop and promote skilling and occupational standards. And this is going to be a priority if we want to ensure that training happens to a high quality all across the board. And it's also really useful if we want to facilitate a movement and exchange of talent across the continent. Number 4, so I'm almost to 5. Number 4, we need to build our talent pipeline. So we need to begin investing in helping our youth to reach their full potential and to acquire the skills they need not only to work in the sector, but also to become creators of new jobs. We're seeing so many transition-related innovations and startups that are being created by young people. So we also need to start early by ensuring that young people are aware of the opportunities that are there. And we need to integrate these skills into not just higher and vocational training, but also into primary and secondary curricula. And so in fact, at COP28, IRENA and their Energy Transition Education Network is going to be launching a Teaching for Net Zero curriculum guide. And finally, related to this, we also need to educate our educators. We need to build their capacity to integrate green knowledge, values, and skills into their teaching practices. So we need to give them the training, the tools, the resources that they need to empower their students. And finally, none of this is going to be achievable without partnerships. So we need partnerships between governments, industry, education and training institutions, civil society, and international bodies. And so today, I want to close by sharing with you about a new global partnership called the Energy Transition Education Network. Can I have a, yep. Fantastic. So this is a new global multi-stakeholder partnership that fosters collaboration to advance renewable energy education. And so the network is working to strengthen education and training provisions by promoting exchanges of good practices, by developing open access curriculum modules, by building the capacity of educators, by developing knowledge and analytical products. And so the network is open to any institution that's interested in contributing towards this collaborative effort to strengthen education for a just transition. So I invite you all to get involved and to join. And you can see here on the screen the QR code. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at education@irena.org. And I really just look forward to hearing from the panelists today, because I know each of you have innovations and programs that you're implementing, so I'm very excited to learn more about them. Thank you very much.
You're not going to get away with that hand clap, because this is fantastic work. Can we just give some? Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. I want to summarize, but I don't want us to get into this trap where people fail to employ or offer others green jobs, and the excuse being they are not skilled. So what they are doing and what she's saying, we need to really, really focus on workforce development, skilling them so that we don't have that excuse. But we need to include everyone. And that's my next framing presentation. And I would like to really ask a colleague of mine, Mwanahamisi Singano. I like calling her Mishi. So Mishi will come here to just really see, how do we include everyone in a just transition? And she is the Senior Global Policy Lead for Women's Environment and Development Organization, which is also a UNFCCC, Africa Women and Gender Constituency. So she has been in this space for some time, and I would like you to really, really set the context on how we ensure that everyone benefits from these opportunities. Can we give her a round of applause, please?
Thank you so much. I thought you will not be able to attempt calling my full name Mwanahamisi, because in these corridors I've been called everything and then anything. But I was being introduced. My name is Mwanahamisi Singano, and I work as a global police lead, and I'm from Tanzania. I've been asked to do a framing, and I'm a feminist, and I work with an organization which identified itself as a feminist organization. So a few days ago, we hosted the gender-focused event, and in the preparation of that event, we asked almost 300 women who signed up to join the event, what is gender justice transition means to them. And here are some of their answers. One said, gender justice transition, and I'm insisting on gender because you're talking on justice transition, but we add gender. So we want the just transition to be gender just first. So they said gender just transition is fairness in action, which target transformative change. Another one said gender justice transition needs to be non-negotiable and need to happen now. And another one said gender just transition means that we improve the quality and conditions of women's job, and it's about the well-being of the people and the planet. We have almost 200 answers of what gender just transition is, and that's just part of the few that I've picked, and happy to share the rest of them. So in terms of the framing, how do we make sure the justice transition become gender just? And as a framing presentation, I'll center it broadly in several principles that I found it useful, and for everyone who will be implementing gender justice transition or transition to attempt at least to make it just. One is intersectionality. The transition means different thing to different group. And all of us and all our government have committed to leave no one behind. We cannot have a transition designed for one group and forced to everyone. So transition needs to center intersectionality. And two, it has to center feminist leadership and insist on feminist leadership, which in our view is different from women's leadership. And in this case, it has to center feminist principle on that transition. We don't want transition when women are are told, this is what we have decided to do. This is how the new job will look for you. Can we center feminist leadership from designing to implementation to evaluation? And 3, and most importantly, transition can only be gender just if they really center redistributive justice. In the current forms of patriarchy, colonialism, and capitalism, women have been marginalized, have been oppressed. We don't want to move to the transition that create jobs which are still very oppressive, because we are just transitioning. So the transition has to address and has to redistribute the resources and address injustices. And more importantly, the transition has to center care work and recognition of that care work and awarding this care work. We have, for the longest time, our workforce have been designed in a way that women are carrying the burden of subsidizing for care work. That cannot continue in the world that we envision free from the climate crisis. So centering care work is also critical. And last, we have a lot of principles, but last and importantly, transition will be gender just if they are green and create jobs which are dignified. We don't want to live in a world with the jobs that are dignified. And women, people living in the urban community, people living with a disability have been recipients of undignified work and undignified jobs. So just to finish and to echo and to summarize all that, from a feminist perspective, we really envision gender justice transition to be a transition in which we can achieve gender equality, and can also transformatively change the relations of power and alter the relations of power, and more importantly, address injustices, structural injustices which have been embedded within our system. So envisioning really a new world free from climate crisis, free from patriarchal oppression, free from colonial dominancy, and free from colonialism and capitalism extractive economic models. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Really, really clear there. As she was speaking about inclusion, I was reminded the recent experience of COVID-19. It taught us that we, in our societies, in our cities, we're leaving some people behind, and COVID-19 just exposed that. We don't want this just transition we are talking about to actually have those elements. That's what we are talking about here. Now, colleagues, we have talked about how to prepare people for these jobs. We have talked about how to include everybody. But how do we promote job creation itself? And I want to actually now bring this conversation to the ground, and I will land my plane in a city. And I'm doing this because this is where the problem of unemployment rears a serious ugly head, because people come with this false promise that they will get employment in cities. And then the reality is different. So I would like us to listen to another framing from someone I respect so much, because she has a passion to actually bridge climate change, addressing climate change with job creation, but not just job creation for the type of people like the Hastingses or the Mishes or the Summers, but for the really kind of what they call hustler communities. So we are joined here by the Honorable Minister, Honorable County Minister for Nairobi. She is the County Minister for Business and Hustler Opportunities. And why I would like her to come here, I'm sorry, Honorable Minister, I'll give you a little bit of matching orders here, but she has just come from a round table of mayors. Nairobi leads African cities on a platform called C40 Cities. The governor of Nairobi is the chair for African mayors on the C40 Cities platform. And he convened mayors from Africa to a round table focusing on climate action, ambitious climate action, and green jobs creation. And these mayors agreed on some practical things that need to be done. And Minister, I would like you to bring that message to us, setting the context for the conversation. Could you please come and share with us, how do we promote green jobs in African cities?
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon once again. I didn't hear all the voices that I can see in the room. Good afternoon once again. Good afternoon. Yeah, now that sounds like it. So my name is Maureen Jerry, and as Hastings has rightly said, I'm a county executive committee member, minister in charge of business and hustle opportunities. And I'm really, really proud to actually be here today to be able to speak about how we can be able to leverage green jobs in all our climate actions that we are currently taking up. As a city of Nairobi, we have made great strides, which I will talk about a bit later on. But for now, I would like to read the call for action that was actually put together by the mayors who were visiting this week for the African Climate Summit, and during the panel discussions that we actually held with them in terms of what are cities committing themselves to. We all know that cities around the world are taking action to tackle the climate crisis. This is now, like she's saying, a non-negotiable call. We all have to put our best foot forward to ensure that climate action is a pivotal role of all our interventions geared towards development as well as economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellow citizens, I stand before you today as a representative of Nairobi City County Government to share a message on behalf of the leaders of our great African cities. Earlier this week, 12 mayors from across the continent met to share their practical actions they are taking in their cities to create green jobs while addressing both climate change and economic challenges. During the event, in a notable display of Pan-African solidarity, our leaders put forward a call to action titled, African Mayors Unite for Climate Action Implementation and Green Job Creation. The call to action encourages national governments and international organizations to increase their climate ambition and their support to city governments. The call to action reads as follows. We, the undersigned African mayors, are writing to national governments and international organizations today with a unified voice and a shared commitment to addressing the urgent need for climate action implementation and green job creation. As leaders representing cities and communities across Africa, we bear witness to the devastating impacts of climate change on our people, our economies, and our environment. Climate change knows no boundaries, and its repercussions are felt globally. However, our continent, Africa, is disproportionately vulnerable to its effects. Our cities face rising sea levels, extreme weather events, water scarcity, desertification, and loss of biodiversity, among other dire consequences. These climate risks are threatening to reverse our development gains, causing severe damage to physical infrastructure and exacerbating poverty, displacement, and unequal access to resources and services. At the same time, we are grappling with rising living costs, high levels of unemployment, and skills shortages. We can no longer afford to delay action while our future hangs in the balance. We mayors of cities in Africa are ready to lead by example and collaborate with the national governments and international organizations, civil society organizations, private sector stakeholders, our fellow mayors worldwide, and the youth. As such, we pledge to 1, deliver a just transition, providing good quality green jobs for all. African cities are already helping to deliver high quality, accessible green jobs and are committed to ensuring that no one is left behind. We will continue to work with a broad range of stakeholders to define how the concept of a just transition can best be applied to specific local contexts. We will tackle systemic inequality by ensuring that green jobs and public services such as renewable energy and sustainable waste management are accessible to marginalized communities, including women, youth, immigrants, informal workers, and people experiencing poverty. Implement our Paris Agreement compatible climate action plans. By implementing our ambitious and inclusive climate action plans, we will significantly contribute towards the national governments achieving their nationally determined contributions. Advance climate responsive budgeting. By committing to integrate climate considerations in our municipal building processes, we pledge to align our financial decisions with our climate action ambitions. We will also foster collaboration, and hence we pledge to forge partnerships with a diverse spectrum of stakeholders, including local communities, businesses, civil society, workers, youth, migrants, and academia to catalyze ambitious, inclusive climate action within our cities. We also commit to build resilience. With sufficient support, we pledge to invest in infrastructure policies and programs that enhance our resilience to climate-related impacts and protect communities at risk. By adopting measures such as improved urban planning, food control, flood control systems, and disaster preparedness initiatives, in addition to risk mitigation efforts, our cities can minimize the extent of losses and damages. It is imperative that we come together to elevate our collective ambition and expedite climate action implementation and green jobs creation. We firmly believe that by working in collaboration, we can establish a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient future for all. Thus, we call upon you, national governments and international organizations, to heed our appeal and undertake the following actions. Prioritize green job creation and a just transition. The transition to a sustainable economy presents significant opportunities for job creation. We shall upon governments to prioritize people and their livelihoods through the creation of good quality green jobs, targeted investments, skills development programs, supportive policies, education, and awareness. To achieve equitable access to opportunities, we must be guided by the principle of social justice and ensure that our transition to a carbon neutral, carbon resilient economy does not entrench existing inequalities by prioritizing marginalized groups, including women, youth, informal workers, migrants, and people experiencing poverty. Additionally, we emphasize the importance of ensuring a just transition for workers in sectors affected by climate change mitigation measures by providing retraining programs and alternative employment opportunities. We will strengthen and implement the nationally determined contributions, and this we'll do by imploring all governments to ensure that their national determined contributions in alignment with the Paris Agreement objectives by setting more ambitious emission reduction targets and outlining robust strategies for their achievement. We can facilitate a rapid transition to a low carbon economy and limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. In addition, we call upon national governments to undertake national stocktakes aligned with the global stocktake and establish robust monitoring, evaluation, and reporting systems that include locally led actions. We will amplify climate financing. Climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts necessitate substantial financial resources. We urge national governments, and more especially international financial institutions, to increase climate financing and support development of climate financing models with a specific emphasis on supporting African nations and cities. This will enable us to invest in just transition plans, skills development, renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure, nature-based solutions, and resilience building measures, while simultaneously fostering the creation of green jobs. We will empower local governments to accelerate implementation, recognizing the vital role of local governments. We urge national governments to empower and enable municipal authorities by implementing nationwide policies that facilitate climate action. Delegating authority, allocating adequate resources, and granting decision-making powers. This will enable us, as mayors of cities in Africa, to implement climate action measures tailored to our cities' unique needs and priorities. We will ensure that the loss and damage fund is operationalized in COP28 and made accessible to local governments. African cities support the call from the African Group of Negotiators for climate finance commitments to match the needs created by both past and future losses and damages. In addition, we call for greater recognition of the specific urban dimension of loss and damage within UNFCCC negotiations and a seat at the table for city voices to support in the identification of innovation and inclusive, locally led solutions. We kindly request your immediate attention to these pressing matters and invite you to engage in constructive dialogue and action with us. Let us seize this opportunity to implement transformative climate action, promote green economies and job creation, and foster sustainable development across Africa and beyond to create safe, inclusive, and prosperous nations and cities. Together, we can forge a resilient future and leave a lasting legacy for generations to come. Before I close, I would like to reiterate Nairobi City County Government's commitment to delivering good quality green jobs for all. Nearly a third of jobs in Nairobi are already green jobs, and as a city, we are committed to dramatically increase this figure by 2030. Creating a new green jobs within an inclusive economy, offering a just transition away from the high carbon sectors of yesterday to the low carbon industries of today and tomorrow is a major priority for the county. Green jobs will help create healthier, fairer communities with lower unemployment and rejuvenated economies that are no longer tied to fossil fuels. Similar progress is being made across African cities, and with the support of our national governments and the international communities, we are certain that we can achieve even more. Thank you for the opportunity to share this important message with you. Asanteni.
Thank you so much. Can we give her a deafening applause? And I'll tell you why. Oftentimes when we are not doing things, one of the excuses that we give is that we don't have political will. This is political will. Colleagues, the mayors are ready at the city level. And what has happened today, this week, at the Africa Climate Action Summit, also demonstrate that our presidents are ready. Political will is there. Just to demonstrate on the Nairobi case, there is another minister who actually was supposed to be with us, but has another commitment. But instead of just focusing on that commitment, he still had to show his face here and be with us just for a few minutes to go to that commitment. And I'd like to just recognize Honorable Auma. Can you just stand? Minister of Greener Nairobi. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the political will is that I would like us to get into a conversation. And you'll see my posture here means that it's a conversation. And I want to engage with you. Having listened to this context, I want to have some perspectives from you. In the interest of time, we have to finish at 2:45, right? And I will give you 3 minutes when I ask you to share perspectives. 3 minutes, don't go beyond 5 minutes. And I want to start with the whole idea of skilling. And I have here Hope Njoroge, who is the climate change lead at Strathmore University, but also a UNESCO chair for climate change, resilience, and sustainability. And you have a history, a long history actually, of building technical skills, particularly for renewable energy sector. What are the just transition skilling opportunities? Maybe let me. Okay, yeah. Let's follow that. What are the just transition skilling opportunities for the continent, from what you have heard for this continent, and how are you addressing this at the university? Would you like to take it from there?
Thank you so much. So from Strathmore University, as the moderator has well said, we have a long-standing history of training technical or technicians, engineers in solar PV, solar photovoltaics, and productive uses of energy. So this includes solar water pumps. This also includes solar water heating. But then we really realized that within Africa, because our reach is in sub-Saharan Africa and not only in Kenya, is that we have a huge skill gap, not only on the technical skills, but also in the non-technical skills. But before I get there, maybe I'll talk about what pathways do we follow, yeah? So the first thing we did when we were funded by the GIZ to actually come up with a solar training lab is that we took the training approach of training of trainers, yeah? So this means that we do not only have a lab in Kenya, or in Nairobi only in Kenya, but we've really, you know, spread our training to different TVETs throughout the country. So this means that we've partnered with most TVET organizations, we have trained their trainers, and we've actually deployed a training kit, yeah? This is for the practical solar PV courses. And this took place in 2014, and we can confirm that most of these TVETs are actually rolling out training opportunities. But since most of our training initiatives are informed by research, we then realized that your local technician is not the person who is actually on the EPRA, the Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority website. So most people do want to install solar, but do you go to the website to actually say, now let me look for a number on the website and get someone to do solar for me? Most likely not, yeah? So what we did is that we realized that these local technicians maybe are not at par with what the government may recognize as a licensed solar PV technician, but we came up with a software where you're able to design. If you are a retailer, a solar retailer, and you have clients coming to you and you want to size a solar PV system, then you can size on the go using an app that we have and with funding that we got from the EC9 European Commission. So these are some of the initiatives, just to mention but a few. But on a holistic scale, we then are now looking at technical gaps, we're now looking at policy gaps, and we're also looking at more or less leadership gaps in this climate sector. We do have a climate leadership training course that rolls out, I think, thrice a year at our Strathmore Business School. At the grassroots level, we have very tremendous work that is being done by a public policy unit, and this looks at women in conservancies, yeah? These women, do they recognize that we're living in a world where we want to go green? Do they know what that means? And what are the pathways if they're using biomass? Because research has shown that 70% of our women, or maybe let's say of cooking that takes place in Africa, is done using biomass. As a woman, do I have any alternative? So we've had trainings that, you know, skill women on the use of making briquettes and actually using them at a very local and community level. We'll come higher up, and at a very professional scale, we do have these trainings, the solar PV trainings that I have mentioned. Do they include women? Maybe not. We'll have a 15-member training, and we'll have one woman or no woman at all, yeah? So what we did at Strathmore is that now we are having women-focused trainings, yeah, where we reach out to different donors. I think SE for All has funded this, GIZ has funded this. We have a very vibrant funder called Kawisafi, who are also funding these women-led trainings, and currently, as we're speaking, we're training over 150 women in Rwanda. We have already trained more than 1,000 women in Kenya, and the list goes on and on. And the other thing that we're also looking at is including other sectors, because when you're transitioning to a low carbon pathway, then other sectors, and not only the technical sectors, are involved. So we have the legal experts, we have policymakers, we have, you know, the guys who are doing AI, IoT, you know, analyzing this data, giving us early warning information and services. So what are we doing? We're also including them in these training programs, yeah? So that this is an all-inclusive training, and that we're not having different sectors doing it in silos. So I think those are some of the things that we are doing, and I could go on and on, but I know my time is up. But I mean, if there are any questions, then I'm happy to take them on. Thank you.
Give me power here. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Great points there, and I would like to also say that if you would like to follow up on those things after this session, please go after these panelists and really get their contacts, and let's take this conversation going. She talked about inclusion of women, and I want to just build on that a bit further. And I'm going to put on spot two people on this panel. We'll go to Solar Sister, and after that I will go to Oxfam. But before I give you your questions, can I just also emphasize, I talked about political will at the beginning. My optician told me to always wear my glasses, and sometimes I want to look young and I don't wear them, and as a result I don't see details. You know, now that I have my glasses on, I've just realized that no, the political will is in this room. We have another minister in our presence. Political will is not an excuse. So we have a third minister from Nairobi City County, and this is my sister, Minister, Honorable Dr. Anastasia Nyarita, and she is the Minister for Inclusivity, Public Participation, and Gender. And I'm introducing her now because we want to talk about women, how do we include women and other marginalized groups. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Yes, give her a round of applause. Solar Sister, and I have Finola Manyala here, who is the country director for Kenya. How does Solar Sister support women to enter the solar sector? How can this model that you are using at Solar Sister be scaled up to accelerate an inclusive energy transition across the continent? And I'm giving you this question because I know that you are investing in local women entrepreneurs to start and sustain successful clean energy businesses. How are you doing it?
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. So at Solar Sister, we basically invest in these women's clean energy businesses. And as you said, we totally like to bring this business on board, and we provide a comprehensive package, I would say, of services. We also provide training and materials that would help these women grow in their businesses. So we all know that kickstarting a business is quite tricky, and I want to tell you for free, doing it in the last mile communities could be even tougher. So what we do at Solar Sister is we say that we provide business in a bag. How do we do this? So we bring these women together and we would give them a branded bag, Solar Sister branded bag that has training materials, has flyers, they would have site sellers, they would also have products in there that they would use to sell, and other materials, of course. These women will then go through a training, and our trainings go for a whole year. So we do trainings through what we call sisterhood meetings. So sisterhood, by the way, is one of our core values at Solar Sister. So what I mean by this is we bring these women together once, which is more to do with, you know, like getting to understand how you would run your business, getting support from your fellow women, but at the same time also just being able to also, you know, get it a step further where they are able to learn a lot from their fellow women, get support, be it family, be it personal, and things like that. So apart from that, we also do ongoing mentorships. So we work with these women really on a day-to-day basis. So we have our local business development associates on the ground who would give these women calls on a day-to-day basis just to, you know, could be advising them on either a warranty issue or could be just something to encourage them and to get them going. So there are a lot of things happening around that, but in the interest of time, I think I would stop there. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Yes, give a round of applause. Also, thank you for sticking to time. And I'm going to go to Kateko Chauke. And Kateko, you are the head of programs at Oxfam South Africa. And I want to take advantage of that knowledge, because I know that Oxfam has been integrating women in a secular economy. Can you just share with us insights in terms of how are you doing that? And how does that really inform the broader civil society in terms of integration of women in this just transition? Take it from there.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this engagement. Oxfam South Africa is part of a global confederation of affiliates working across various countries. At the core of our work is to transform systems that perpetuate poverty and inequality, and centralized to that is feminist principles and locating care work in every aspect of our work. How I want to start off is by really awakening us to the fact that as we think about the just transition, we really need to balance ecological objectives with the social impacts of the just transition. And at the heart of that is realizing that cities have a role to play in fast-tracking circularity or circular economies. And within that context, it's understanding that circularity has become synonymous with sustainable development. And so when speaking about the role that cities can play, is also taking into consideration how we bring our women also into the transformation that we are seeking to create. And to invest in these circular economies, we really need to focus on green job creation and ensuring that value chains are extended to be inclusive of women and young people. And in this way, capital investments and other inputs can be repurposed to actually meet business objectives and foster economic development. So linking this to the promotion of the just transition, structural adjustments that accompany that need to also focus on introducing and embedding gender-responsive mechanisms in how we execute our initiatives, as well as how we put in place monitoring and evaluation frameworks. Now, within that context, we all know that reskilling, job creation is an expensive exercise in the context of us transitioning into cleaner energy sources. For example, South Africa alone requires 2.65 billion in the next 4 years to actually rescale its workforce to meet the demands of the just transition. And so some of the initiatives that Oxfam has really focused on, and I'll just focus on Southern Africa, is that we've very much driven initiatives that center women, build skills for that, and we have established very crucial partnerships with government, for example. One of the projects I'd like to cite is the project on waste management and recycling that we have partnered with the city of Ekurhuleni in Gauteng, South Africa. And that entails a variety of initiatives that look at mentorship and support and training for women-led cooperatives. Now, this project alone has looked at the entire value chain of waste management, how we actually integrate skills development in each aspect or component of the project. But central to that is the ability of that initiative to create 6,000 green jobs in under 2 years. And looking at the demographics of a country such as South Africa, you can see just how much that has contributed just only in one province. And initiatives backed by, for example, the Adaptation Fund through UN Habitat are allowing us to scale some of those models in other parts of the country, such as the Eastern Cape, for example. And so within that context is really now looking at how do we extend the value chain from waste management to producing renewable energy sources, but rather connecting these value chains instead of looking at them in isolation. And so just to finish off is really to mention that as we think about the transition for the continent, we really need to take into consideration 3 aspects of how we integrate not only women and youth into new alternative models of economic production, but to really focus on investing in skills development and roadmaps for that. 2, piloting skills development zones within key special economic zones of our city. And 3, mobilizing allocations from existing public and private sector revenues that focus on educating the next workforce. In conclusion, I'd really like to call everybody to just awakening ourselves to the fact that we really need to invest in educating the next generation of the workforce to meet the standards and the demands of the just transition that we are progressively entering into. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, give her a round of applause, please. Thank you. You know, you brought back the skills development, but you also brought a dimension of youth. And Mary and Israel, I'm looking at you now, because I want to take this conversation back to skills development, education, innovation, but also bring it down to marginalized groups and especially to the youth. And I think I'll start with Mary Sichagi, and I'll tell you why I'm punishing you. Is because you are coming from the Center for Mathematics. I failed mathematics, and each time I meet somebody who actually boasts coming from a Center for Mathematics, I just want to prove that there are some difficult things. So I'll start with you. You're from the Center of Mathematics, Science and Technology Education in Africa, the Association for the Development of Education in Africa. It's ADEA. And my knowledge is that you're working really a lot with African ministers to really advance education, the ministers of education. Can you just maybe reflect a little bit with us? How is ADEA advancing green education and skills building to ensure that we are preparing people for the green industries? But most importantly, I want further actions and support that you are doing to ensure that young people are actually prepared for a green economy. Take it from there.
Thank you very much. I'm Mary. I work for the Association for Development of Education in Africa. I want to say that for those of you who don't know ADEA, ADEA is a forum for policy dialogue. We discuss policies that address issues in education, and I think the green economy is one of them. We network ministries of education and help them peer learn. And we also bring them together to dialogue and agree with development partners on which is the priority investment areas. The discussion on green economy, ADEA believes that the critical role of education cannot overemphasized. And the reason we agree that green economy should start at school level is because schools develop character. And character has a belief system. I know you all been in a school. And when you're in a school, there are those schools you can call inviting schools. And there are those that are disinviting to the children. There's no way a child who has been to a disinviting school will appreciate the role of green economy. They will not. And so education is not just academia. Education goes beyond the character development and the belief system. And that is why ADEA brings together ministers of education who actually champion policies that govern priority investment in a given country. We also believe that the programs that countries should design should include aspects of renewable energy in programs like Education for Sustainable Development. And this is what we champion whenever we meet policymakers. We talk about describing what you can call an inviting school climate in terms of 5 Ps. So I'll elaborate the 5 Ps and you'll appreciate the importance of people. The first P is people. Who are the people interacting with the children, right from early years to university education? Do the people believe that we need to transform the children to see green economy as a youth dividend that they can escalate in their later years? And you know, people establish policies in schools. They determine what should be taught. They determine how children should be developed in terms of character, how should they prioritize specific concepts of education. And therefore, P, the first P is the people in the school. And that is why we believe that by engaging ministers of education to come up with policies that address school-level issues to strengthen the person in the name of educator, the teacher, the principal, the parent, and all these people are important. So we have advanced policies that address the people factor. The other P is the programs, policies that strengthen school-based programs. We have found very uninviting school programs that do not resonate with the aspirations of either the continent, the country, or even globally. Now we are advancing green economy, but you'll go to a school and find they are not even aware. So I believe that ADEA focuses on policies that address issues that can escalate, programs that are more inviting to the children and also to the economy. The other P is policies. Which kind of policies are schools advancing? Which again starts with the national policy. And currently, this country is developing what we call the STEM education policy. And as we are developing this, we are asking other countries to learn from Kenya. This month, later in the month, we are actually bringing together policymakers from 17 African countries to dialogue about play-based STEM education. Schools that are safe, children can play and enjoy STEM. STEM is a culture. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for those who don't know. It's a culture that we should propagate. Our children should play and enjoy STEM. We shouldn't introduce academia at grade 1. And so we are bringing policymakers who also have priority investments in their respective countries to dialogue about this right in this country later this month. We also look at the fourth P, which is processes. How are we processing our children? How are things being done? Do schools propagate programs that enhance, let's say, green economy? And finally, the last P is the places. How are the places in the school? Do schools create a culture that they love to enjoy what we are teaching? And lastly, we would like to say that we have a number of programs that we invite development partners to invest in as ADEA on the continent, because we rally development partners to focus on priority issues that can develop education in Africa, because ADEA is the voice of education on the continent. Thank you very much.
Mike, all right, here we go. Israel, I'm coming to you because you are a disability and youth advocate. So for those of you that don't know, Israel Balongandi is from the Congo Innovation Academy. But I know him most as an advocate for the youth and an advocate for people with disability. Now I'd like you to reflect a little bit in terms of your work, in terms of how you are empowering the youth. And of course, as you do that, focus on the youth with disabilities or those that are unemployed. How are you empowering them to ensure that they tap into the green job opportunities that are there? 3 to 5 minutes. To the point. Take it from there.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for presenting me that well. And I would also add one more detail. I'm a COP28 presidency youth delegate for this upcoming COP, representing the voice of disabled young people in climate negotiations that are going to come next coming month. So let me please allow me please to talk about 2 facts. First of all, the first fact is that the energy sector contributes to over 60% to global emissions. Do you know what does that mean? It means that if we transition, if we shift to clean energy, we will no longer have this problem of climate change. And we already saw it in COVID time, in COVID era, where flights were not there, and there was not a lot of movement of cars and a lot of, fossil fuel companies were closed. Was a sad memories, but the ozone layer, we had time to breathe, you know, and also the atmosphere was happy. But we cannot be waiting for those sad situations to teach us how to protect our environment. We can start now doing clean energy. And also the second fact is people with disabilities are the most affected by climate change, because, you know, when there is flood caused by climate change, people with disability like me and those on the wheelchair find it hard to move. Yet, people without physical disability, they can find a way easily, but it is very hard for them. And when there is extreme heat, people with albinism are exposed to skin cancer. I think those are the facts we need to know. And also people who can't hear and talk, how are they going to receive information? Well, there is flood, governments always take measures, but how are they going to receive information? What are they going to do to protect themselves? So those are the things that are showing that people with disabilities are the most affected. And if we combine the two facts, we realize that people with disabilities really need to be empowered when it comes to clean energy, because it is a sector that brings a lot of emission. And also, people with disability being affected, they need to work on it. And how? And my organization, Congo Innovation Academy, and also EDA, Enable the Disabled Action, with UNDP, we are now implementing a project on how to teach people with disability in smart cooking solutions. And it already started in Goma, eastern part of DRC. And they are doing so well, and of course, imagining people on the wheelchair being trained on how to do smart cooking solutions. And when we talk on solar energy, we are also willing to train people who cannot talk in solar engineering, because, you know, people who cannot talk, they can talk very well on producing things, please, because they can be very creative on that. And apart from energy, we also have food security, because people with disability, sometimes they go beg on the streets just because of finding food. And we teach them also how to do inclusive agriculture. Myself, I can do farming very well. Even with my crutches, I can dig very well. And I wish I would bring some of the pictures here. And looking forward to finish, we have now set up an acceleration program for creating green project led by people with disabilities. In Kinshasa, we have 4 hectares for land where we are going to train young people in green solutions so that they can also be part of saving the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really very clear there. Colleagues, you have done very well on time, those that have spoken. I now have 10 minutes, and I want to begin to land this ship, and I have 2 speakers that will help me do that. But I want to be promoted next time from moderator to a panelist, so please help me stick to the end time so that I can get that promotion. So we have 10 minutes. We need to finish at quarter to 3. I want to go to Megan, because I know you can help me get promoted to become a panelist by sticking to the 3 to 5 minutes. Megan, what we are hearing here, we have heard about cities, we have heard about things happening at national government level. I would like you to connect the pieces here. And I'm doing this because you come from an organization called ICLEI, but you also lead the Covenant of Mayors in Sub-Saharan Africa. And you have done a lot of work on what you're saying, we call multi-level governance, making sure that cities and national governments, or making sure that subnational and national governments are working together. You convened a session under track 2, I believe, on multi-level governance, track 2, for this particular Africa Climate Week, on multi-level governance. Can you please just reflect in terms of how can national governments and subnational governments work together to achieve this just transition? You can, maybe you can focus on energy, just energy transition, because you do good work there. Take it from there, Megan.
Thank you, Hastings, and good to be with you all. I will stick to my time frame. Also, thank you to Israel for making the link into energy, because that's what I'd like to focus on. At ICLEI, as Hastings rightly mentions, we work at the level of cities, towns, and regions, but some of our main member cities are actually in secondary and intermediate cities, which, as we all know, are not only urban. The rural and urban continuum exists in these cities. And I think what always strikes us about this conversation around the energy transition is, how can we speak about an energy transition in Africa where we have such a massive energy access issue? And the three stats that depict this best for me are the fact that 640 million out of the 1.4 billion Africans do not have access to electricity. In sub-Saharan Africa, the number of people without access actually grew from 74 to 77% in 2020. And fewer than 40% of African countries will have universal access by 2050. So this is the ethical dilemma we often face as ICLEI working with cities. Sometimes it's a choice of faster access using fossil fuels or slower access using renewable energy, and what you do in those contexts. And these are the difficult trade-offs in this just energy transition space, but ones that our city mayors and governors have to make every day. And in fact, we've been grappling with this issue just recently in relation to a clean cooking project we're enacting with FCDO funding in Freetown and Kampala, because the best way to enable clean cooking in these informal settlements is actually through LPG, which is a transition fuel, but it's a fossil fuel-based gas. And in that context, I can remember running up to the Clean Cooking Alliance and saying, is it okay? Is it okay? You know? And their response is yes. We have to find ways we transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and LPG is part of that solution. So I just want to echo the point that these decisions we need to make balancing these multiple and competing challenges. And then I want to bring it back to Hastings' specific question around multi-level governance and say, I was part of a session yesterday convened by the high-level champions, and what struck me in that session where I was asked to do the wrap-up comments was, from civil society to SDI working with local communities to us working with cities, the overarching point was money is not getting to where it needs to go. It's not getting to the level in which local NGOs, local CBOs, private sector can actually make the change in this just energy transition. We heard from an amazing young lady, and I'll actually name her. Her name is Zambi Mati, who runs Gengi Makers, and she makes bricks out of plastic. An amazing intervention. A gentleman from Ampersand running e-mobility projects out of Africa, and both of them said funding is not getting to them, and we also know it's not getting to cities. So I think I'll end, Hastings, with the call that our work really needs to focus as those in the sector on making sure that money gets to where it needs to be and holding to account those that come to these conferences year after years and make commitments of bringing funding to the local level. Thank you.
Round of applause to Megan. Thank you so much. Money needs to go to where it needs to where action needs to take place. Our last speaker, and I chose that to be last because I want you also to give like concluding sending off remarks. Leaving Nairobi as our host, I want you to just reflect. Is it possible? Can we really create green jobs at the city level? What are you doing? What is the city of Nairobi doing to green Nairobi? We're not just talking about creating jobs. Green Nairobi, but through that, creating jobs. You are the one standing between now and my promotion. You have 5 minutes. You go beyond that. I won't be a panelist next time. I'll continue being a moderator. Take it from there.
Thank you very much, Hastings. So, sitting here and representing His Excellency, the Governor for Nairobi City County Government, he actually, when he came into office, he came in with a manifesto. These are pledges, commitments that he promised the residents of Nairobi on actions that he would take towards giving them livable standards, creating a city of order, creating a city of dignity for them, a city of hope, as well as be able to also enjoy opportunities in this city. As a city, we have a climate change action plan, which came into force in 2020, and it's running until the year 2050, and a period within which we are hoping that we'll have achieved carbon neutrality. I know this is quite ambitious, but we are actually trying to make strides to make sure that we achieve these targets that we set. If I look at the solid waste management area, which is ideally one of the biggest challenges that I think we have as cities and in most African cities, and Nairobi is not left behind in it, is that we've been able to create a lot of jobs geared towards making sure that the city that we have is well maintained, is clean, and is actually healthy for the residents who are living here. So far, we have been able to create about 3,500 jobs. These jobs are jobs that have been given out to young youth and women who ideally have not been having employment for a while, and ideally what they're supposed to do is to make sure that the city is maintained. If you walk around CBD today, you will find that the Central Business District of Nairobi is actually very clean. This is because we have a 24-hour cleaning service that we have actually enhanced within the city, whereby we have this team that has actually come in, working in shifts and making sure that they are able to maintain the cleanliness of the city. That also includes maintaining our green spaces. We have several green spaces within the city, which ideally they also are required to maintain, as well as enhance our tree growing campaign. As a city, we also have a tree growing campaign where we have a target of planting 1 million trees every year until 2032. So looking at the target that we have, which also requires that we also have enough workforce for us to be able to maintain what we need to do as a target for tree growing, we also are having this young youth that we have employed doing this work. We've also looked into employing technical officers. These technical officers ideally support in terms of making sure that environmental actions are well taken care of. These are the officers who will be guiding the teams that are supposed to be doing the actual environmental work, whether it is in terms of management of our green spaces, whether it is in terms of waste management, whether it is in terms of just making sure that we monitor and ensure that our environmental laws are complied with. We have almost 100 new jobs that we've been able to create in the last week, and already now they have received the employment letters, and that's really a good start for the city of Nairobi in terms of making sure that we have our youth being employed. We also are looking into other areas in terms of enforcement. Just yesterday, we had the Clean Air event that was held outside City Hall, whereby now what His Excellency the Governor promised residents is that now we will start taking measures to ensure that we maintain our air quality to the right standards. Air pollution is a big problem in this city, and now we are going to be employing 1,000 enforcement officers who are going to be distributed in various parts of the city in terms of our efforts to combat climate change. We are also looking into other aspects such as creation of markets. These markets, ideally, most of them are food produce markets, which ideally are going to be ensuring that we are able to to safeguard and be able to give a livable living standards for most of the informal traders who are operating within the city. These 20 markets ideally are also going to be able to create jobs in a dignified environment for informal traders. We also will be having material recovery facilities, which are going to be used for separating the waste in the markets. What we have committed to now is to make sure that a lot of the waste that is generated within the markets now does not end up at the final disposal site, but it is sorted within the facilities, and to be able to enhance that circular economy approach where they can be able to recover a lot of this waste and it be able to be either repurposed for other purposes, whether it is either for compost, whether it is either for animal feeds, and even for biogas recovery. Close to the heart of the governor, just recently, we launched a school feeding program. This school feeding program ideally looks into safeguarding looking at the most vulnerable communities within the city, and these are the children that we actually have. And how well are we able to bring in these children to make sure that they are able to survive in this city in terms of making sure that when they go to school, they are able to have a decent meal and they are actually able to partake their education as required. And we have launched various kitchens in different cities, within the city in different schools. And these kitchens are actually using clean energy because they're using briquettes for cooking. And there's also going to be facilities for sorting the waste, any waste that is generated from the kitchens. And all this is actually going to be done by the community and the youth living within that area, so they are also able to actually engage themselves in meaningful income-generating ventures. So, looking at the urban and renewable projects, we have very old estates within the city of Nairobi. These old estates have not been retrofitted or renovated for many years. And that has also come in as a very big county initiative. We have a lot of people now who have been employed now with the work of making sure that they are well retrofitted to ensure that we have energy efficient buildings, which have got water saving fixtures, which also have land spaces, plot ratios within those estates which have been set aside for green spaces. Rainwater harvesting as well is also coming in very handy. And with this, we've been able to have a lot of youth and a lot of jobs that are being created in terms of these estates. We have almost about 11, 20 estates which are currently being renovated for that purpose, just so they can well be retrofitted to actually help us get to our climate agenda. We also have, other than that, and also looking at the fact that we as a city, we are also growing tremendously. We are going to be coming up with a Biashara Fund. This is under the Hustlers Fund. This Biashara Fund is going to be attracting investment opportunities for our micro, small scale enterprises, which mostly are also involved in various informal activities. Informal activities such as those ones who are engaged in sorting out of our waste in informal areas. Those who are also doing small ventures in terms of like what she talked about, the solar PV panels. Those small industries ideally which are startups and ideally need support in terms of enhancing our climate change agenda will now get funding from the Biashara Fund. And we are hoping that in the next couple of months, this fund is going to be launched and it's actually going to be supporting a lot of industries for jobs. What I would like to say for our city is that we have been able to create a big milestone in terms of creating work, and I think it's possible for green jobs to be created by the subnational governments so that we can be able to heed to the mayor's call that I just read earlier on in terms of creating good quality green jobs, because for Nairobi, it is working and we will continue making it work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to the minister. In Nairobi, it is working, it is possible, so let's go out there, address climate change, while creating green, decent jobs, improving livelihoods, and making sure that we're developing the skills, but also making sure that we are including everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, we end there. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's just give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. We can move to our next events, and let's leave this room quickly so that the next session can start also in time. Thank you so much. You have a good day.
Sorry, if you could kindly make sure that everybody who was in for the last session and doesn't want to attend this one is moving swiftly, because we would like to get started. Thank you. If I could